This video is all about the process of soldering the electrical components together to make the circuit for the Jitterbug. Solder is very soft. You can pull a piece off just with your fingers. The first job is to clean the tip of the soldering iron on the damp sponge and then to melt a tiny bit of solder onto the end. This process is called tinning the soldering iron. The next job is to tin the wires, which means to melt a little tiny bit of solder onto everything we're going to join together. Notice that we apply the heat to the wire first and then touch the solder to it. The slight smoke you can see is from the flux in the solder, which helps to clean any impurities off the surface and helps the solder to stick. We'll repeat the process now with the motor. Notice that the soldering iron touches it first and then we melt a tiny bit of solder onto each of the two terminals. Set that to one side. The next job is to do the same thing with the switch, where we tin one of the center terminals and one of the end terminals. It's very small, it's very fiddly, and you need a good steady hand to do this part of the job. Just make sure that each of the terminals has a good covering of solder, not too much, and don't hold the soldering iron on there too long and overheat the switch. Next job is to get a short length of wire to complete the circuit. So we use the cutters and then we use the wire stripper to remove the plastic insulation on the outside of the wire. Next job, of course, is to tin this wire. And again, we'll place this down on top of our piece of wood so we can actually hold it up off the surface to tin it. Giving a slight twist to the end of the wires helps to hold all the cores together. And again, soldering iron touches it first, applies some heat, then we melt solder onto it. Turn it around, repeat the process. Again, you're going to need a steady hand for this. Notice that each time we finish, we place the soldering iron back into the stand, so there's no risk of anyone actually putting a hand down on top of it if it's flat on the table. Now, since each of the components is now coated in solder, all we need to do is touch the soldering iron and the components together and they're stuck, because we've melted the solder on each of the surfaces and joined the parts together. We'll attach the other black wire from the battery holder to the motor. Again, it's a bit fiddly, you sometimes feel like you need three hands to do this. Again, there we are, it's stuck. Now to complete the circuit, all we need now is the switch. This is perhaps the most difficult part of all, because it's so small. But again, if you've tinned each of the components, just a tiny little touch should be all you need to actually get it all to join together. This is where you might want to get a friend to help you, because it really is awkward. And again, just a touch with the soldering iron and the parts are all joined together and your circuit is complete, with the positive wire from the battery going to the switch, the power flowing through the switch to the motor and then back to the battery again afterwards. There's your circuit completed.